This is a technique that I get asked about a lot, and with good reason I think. It's striking and visually abstract, but it's also a powerful technique to elevate a dish by adding texture and flavour. There's a few techniques that I come back to regularly because they fit so well with my approach to cooking and the type of food that I make. This is one of those techniques, along with some things that I've already made videos about, like how I concentrate flavours at low temperature using the rotovap, use koji fermentation to develop deep, savoury umami flavours, and the unique clarity and freshness that you can get in aromatics through vacuum distillation. I'm really into making quite simplified pared back dishes with a limited number of elements, and that doesn't mean they're easy to make, but just that the focus is on the intensity and balance of flavours rather than having a number of disparate parts. I'd always rather have less things on the plate, but have them be as impactful as possible. And this fruit glass technique really suits that approach that I have to my work, and it's also one of the simpler techniques that I use to achieve. In a second, I'll show you the full technique from start to finish, making a grape and fennel pollen glass. But the way I currently use this on my menu is as part of the final course, which I've already made a full video about. It's a chocolate truffle flavoured with vacuum distilled Scotch bonnet chilies, and you can see much more about this in that other video, but the basic concept was to use the aromatics of chilies, but to separate that from their spice, and I capture those aromatics through vacuum distillation, and then I take these little chocolate truffles and rather than say dipping them in tempered chocolate to serve them, I place them between sheets of this fruit glass made from fermented pineapple and passion fruit. For the version I'll show you today, we'll do a relatively simple fruit glass using grape juice and sprinkled with some fennel pollen from my garden. You could of course infuse other flavours into this, and I've done versions infused with lavender before, and then I also did a version of this glass sprinkled with black sesame seeds for a dish that I used to do with tofu and yuzu koshu. This also works well with other fruit juices, and you can add flavoured infusions and syrups to it too. It's really adaptable. It is important though that your base liquid isn't too thick. It should be something fairly clear like fruit juice. It doesn't work great with things like purees, for example. So to start off making the glass, I'm going to take my grape juice and add a little sugar. I'm using a litre of grape juice and I'll add 250 grams of sugar to that. And then to this, I'm going to add 20 grams of NH Pectin. So my grape juice, sugar and NH Pectin will be brought up to a simmer whilst I whisk them. And then I'll pour that out into a tub and let it set into a gel. Then once that grape gel is set, we want to gently rewarm it. Not to the point that it's a completely free-flowing liquid, but just to the point that it's barely melted, and that tends to be around 50 degrees Celsius. I'll do this in the Thermomix generally for convenience, but you can do it easily in a pan as well. Once that grape liquid is melted, we'll give it a good mix, and I quite often give it a bit of a whisk actually, because I like the look that those trapped air bubbles give the finished glass. Then we pour that liquid out onto a silicone mat, and we want to roll it back and forth on the mat to create a thin layer. I'll let that thin layer of liquid cool for a couple of minutes until it's set back into a very thin sheet. Then this goes into the dehydrator at 45 degrees for about an hour until the sheet is semi-dried and pliable. Then I'll remove these sheets from the dehydrator and tear off pieces into abstract crumpled shapes, and that's the look that I like for this, but if you wanted something more precise you could cut these, or you could have even used a stencil to get the particular shapes that you want. Then these shapes will go back in the dehydrator at the slightly higher temperature of 55 degrees Celsius for about 24 hours until they are crisp and brittle. After this, they're ready to use, and if you needed to store them for a couple of days, you can place them in an airtight container with a little bit of silica gel. And like I say, you can easily adapt this technique to make the flavours and shapes that suit the style of your own food. You could make cylinders, for example, by wrapping the pliable sheets around pieces of acetate before you fully dry them, and then those could be filled with something flavourful. But I quite like this abstract look, and that's what I use for the Scotch bonnet dish, which is something I can't imagine really changing on my menu anytime soon. So I hope you found that interesting, and if you do give the technique a go, then drop me a comment and let me know how you got on with it. If this has been useful, give me a like and hit subscribe, and I make a bunch of different food and drink videos across a range of topics, so if you're interested in food, have a bit of a look around and maybe you'll find something else on my channel that would be interesting to you too. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.